Very good afternoon to you. You're watching Newsfeed with myself and Ntsikelelo. Going back to one of our top stories, the ANC NEC is meeting in Boksburg. The meeting will be followed by the NEC Lekgotla, which will map out the program of action for the year ahead. That's NSFAS, the fate of Jacob Zuma, as well as the Western Cape Powers Bill, is amongst the topics on the agenda. For political analysis, we're now joined by Professor Ntsikelelo, who's the Director for the Center for Security, Peace and Conflict Resolution at Nelson Mandela University. Professor Breakfast, a pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of some of the pronouncements made by the NEC, maybe let's first speak to the important role and importance of the NEC Lekgotla in really shaping the ANC's program of action for the year ahead. How important would you say this is?
Well, Nhlahla, this is a very important year for the ANC, given the fact that we are on a election cycle. So the ANC has a mammoth task in terms of mapping out a plan in terms of how they are going to approach the upcoming general elections, because they are faced with a number of threats, namely the newly formed political party, MK, but also other societal challenges that members of the society expect the ANC to provide leadership on. But also I think the elephant in the room is Jacob Zuma, given the fact that he has been a thorny issue, giving the ANC a headache. So I think those are some of the things that the ANC has been grappling with of late in the meeting that is underway.
You're quite right. And the ANC, let's remind our viewers, is the highest decision-making body of the party between conferences. It is discussing a range of issues, including the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, the issue around Jacob Zuma, like you mentioned, and of course, as we heard just now, the Western Cape Powers Bill, and that ICJ ruling against the Israeli government. Yeah. How do these diverse topics then contribute to the broader political landscape and also the ANC's internal dynamics?
Well, Nhlahla, the ANC is a governing party, so it is expected to provide a strategic direction to the country. But also the ANC is faced with a challenge of having a possibility of not coming back to power. It might come back to power, but also there have been some findings that it might get below 50%. So I think that has been on the agenda as well in terms of how to improve its electoral performance so that it can implement its program of action.
Time and time again, we hear the ANC mentioning organizational renewal as one of the key areas for discussion. In your analysis, how crucial is this aspect for the ANC's future, and what challenges might they face in achieving this organizational renewal?
Well, I think the conception of organizational renewal is one of the issues that rose to prominence at the conference of the ANC in 2017. And it was reinforced again in the previous conference of the ANC, I think 2 years ago, whereby the ANC took a stand against corruption because it was seen to be not taking corruption seriously, and adopted, among other things, the step-aside principle. And that is all well and good in theory, but in practice, I think the ANC has fallen short in terms of implementing that principle across the board in a way that is fair and square. But it has been seen in some quarters to be implementing that to purge certain people who are not part of the dominant faction, and that has escalated the magnitude of tensions within the ANC. So I think that has been a project gone wrong. Otherwise, we would never have heard about the newly formed political party. The newly formed political party, Umkhonto weSizwe, is a breakaway of the ANC and is a manifestation of the project gone wrong of a renewal.
So the recent ICJ ruling on the Gaza war was also discussed by the ANC NEC, and we heard the organization welcoming the ICJ's ruling. How might the ANC stance on international matters such as this ruling really impact its domestic political standing, if you will, and also its relations with other nations?
Well, on that score, I think the ANC has done very well. I mean, the government.
Yeah.
Because I think our standing as a country has improved on a global scale. Because if you look at our foreign policy, one of the hallmarks of our foreign policy is the culture of human rights. So the ruling that was made on Friday really painted a good picture about the country on matters of human rights. But at the same time, I think, in my opinion, you cannot win elections on the international front while you have domestic failures. You've got to strike the balance. So in as much as the ANC has done very well on the international front, but I think it falls short on the domestic front on a whole range of things like inequality, poverty, power outage. The list is endless.
Let's look further into the argument that you raise right now, Professor Breakfast. How do international issues like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict then influence the ANC's political narrative and also its standing among the South African public?
My view is that, for instance, there is a symbiotic relationship between the international front and the domestic front. Hence, I think one has to strike the balance. For instance, my definition of foreign policy is that foreign policy is nothing else but how the state projects its domestic values on a global scale. For instance, when we project our constitutional values on a global scale, that becomes our foreign policy. Like, for instance, when we talk about human rights, rule of law, democracy, and so on. When we project those values, which are embedded in the Constitution internationally, that becomes our foreign policy. So on that score, I think the ANC has done very well. But at the same time, I don't think that the majority of people are influenced by international trends in terms of how they vote. I think people, the first thing that, comes to the minds of many people, it's immediate issues of poverty, unemployment, inequality, the practical issues that people are dealing with on the ground. As opposed, I'm not saying that what is happening on the international front is not important. That judgment of the ICJ is very important. But I think, arguably, it's people maybe who are part of the middle class who have an in-depth understanding of the centrality of that, as opposed to ordinary people on the ground.
You mentioned another elephant in the room being the big issue around former President Jacob Zuma and his association with the MK party. Now, given the complex circumstances surrounding Jacob Zuma's status within the ANC, how do you think the party can really navigate the challenges and also maintain unity?
Yeah, I think the slow pace of responsiveness of the ANC on this matter has been problematic. The ANC has not done itself any favor by not taking a stand against this matter. You cannot say that former President Zuma walked away from the ANC by himself, therefore the ANC will just fold its arms and then turn a blind eye. That is not good enough. You've got to set the record straight. You have to clear the air. You have to give him a confirmatory letter that is no longer the member of the ANC. But the ANC has refused to take a responsibility in terms of announcing in public that they have cut him off. He's no longer the member of the ANC, simply because they have a fear that might escalate the magnitude of the tensions within the ANC. But that, has really made it worse to bring Sholozi to book.
But it's quite interesting that ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula, he spoke recently mentioning that Zuma's removal as an ex-official member was due to his sentencing, very interestingly. How might this decision then impact the dynamics in the NEC and also the broader ANC leadership?
Well, I mean, that's a technical matter. It's one of the constitutional provisions, you know, given the fact that he served a sentence at some point. There is a constitutional provision for that. So I think that argument still stands. But I also think that the ANC, the reason why they've been very much reluctant to act against him is simply because Msholozi does enjoy a great deal of support within the ANC on a large scale. And he was very strategic when he made his speech, when his daughter read his speech on his behalf, when he made certain allegations that the current leadership of the ANC, and I'm not talking about the rightness or the wrongness of that, but the argument was that the current leadership of the ANC is intolerant of divergent opinions. So I think the fear was that if they let go of him by expelling him, they might be confirming some of these things that he has been saying about the leadership. So they must just turn a blind eye. But that has not done any good for the ANC. It has caused more harm than good, actually, because Msholozi has been traveling throughout the length and the breadth of the country, campaigning for Umkhonto weSizwe, which is actually posing a serious threat to the ANC. The ANC cannot downplay that.
But now, how does the ANC then maintain its political standing, especially in key provinces like KwaZulu-Natal, for instance, given this new dynamic that's been added by the MK?
Yeah, I think KZN is up for grabs. And my reading of the situation, I mean, I can put my head on the block. I can bet my bottom dollar. The ANC is not coming back to power there. It's quite clear, in my opinion. I think the writing is on the wall. Even if there was no MK, I don't think that they were going to come back to power. I think there will be a coalition arrangement, maybe between the EFF and the IFP, and I don't know about the DA, but definitely it's not the. I think the ushering in of MK has compounded the situation for the ANC. So I don't think that they stand a good chance. I mean, Msholozi, whether you like it or not, we might not agree with his operations. He's got an upper hand because after the death of Umntwana, he is seen to be the embodiment of KZN now, you know, and people might not like him, but he enjoys a great deal of support. I mean, there have been findings confirming that.
Very interesting. So as South Africa then approaches elections, which some say will be in May, how could the outcomes of the NEC meeting then shape the ANC strategies and also its messaging leading up to these elections?
My view is that, and I'm not trying to sound like a pessimist, but I think the damage is done and what is done cannot be undone. I'm not sure if the message of the ANC at the moment can sway the political behavior of the electorate against the background of domestic failures. I think the ANC had enough time. When the ANC got 57% in 2019, I think that should have been a wake-up call, you know, that it might be difficult for it to come back to power in these upcoming general elections. So, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how they package the message, what they do. I think it's too late. It will take a miracle for them to come back to power, given the fact that they are faced with a number of challenges.
Well, there you have it. We extend our gratitude to Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast for really providing valuable insights into these ongoing discussions within the ANC. Also, the complexities of political decisions, especially regarding that matter of former President Jacob Zuma, and really highlighting the intricate balance the ANC seeks to maintain, especially leading up to these all-important elections this year.